So, Copycat came out in 2022, and it's pretty good. It might be too good. Screw it, we're in the year of Payday 3 now. Time to break Payday 2 and send the crew off to New York as the heisting gods they deserve to be. Today, I'm going to show you one of the most powerful builds that has likely ever existed in Payday 2. I'm talking up there with Release Rogue, Grinder, Stoic and Leech. Not only that, it's also one of the most enjoyable setups I've ever had the pleasure of playing with, and to my absolute shame, I actually overlooked this perk combo in my Copycat video for Overkill. So let's set the record straight today. We may have already found the best build of 2022, let's go cause a little anarchy. So before I dive into all the details of this setup, I want to make one thing clear. I think Copycat is an awesome concept that's been pulled off incredibly well, all things considered, but is almost impossible to balance due to all the variables it deals with. And let's be honest, there are a lot of moving parts here, giving it the kind of complexity no other perk deck has to offer. It's already taking over the stealth meta, and I personally think it's coming for all other playstyles as well, with crazy stoic, biker and hacker builds already out there. In my opinion, the real secret to truly breaking this deck is Blitzkrieg Bop, the Anarchist perk, and when I first saw this during testing for my guide video, I noticed some potential but assumed that without the Lust for Life perk, it simply wouldn't armor gate as well as regular Anarchist, so I skipped over it. How wrong I was though, as in actuality, Anarchist has some crazy synergy with the base perks of Copycat, as this deck of course has innate access to 20% dodge chance, something Anarchist could never seriously consider running otherwise. This might not sound like a lot, but let me tell you, when a build already has numerous ways to absorb damage completely, additional dodge chance becomes far more valuable than it would be otherwise. Somehow, this setup with only 20 points of armor and base 230 health is one of the most survivable in the entire game. Let's find out how it works. Normally I'd start with the weapons for a build, but today I'm shifting things around as I've tried this setup out with a few different options and have basically learned that so long as your gun hits hard and is concealable, what you specifically bring is fairly irrelevant. Instead, let's start off with the all-important perk deck, Copycat. For cards 1, 3, 5 and 7 I equip perk number 3, Cat-like Reflex, for a total of 20% additional dodge chance. For card 9, it's perk 15, Blitzkrieg Bop, for that Anarchist roleplay. This grants us an additional 2 seconds of health damage immunity when our armor breaks once every 30 seconds, and morphs our armor into Anarchist style constant regeneration. With the suit, this simply means 10 armor regenerated every second, but let's be honest, the amount of armor is irrelevant here, as we just want to absorb individual shots as frequently as possible, and 1 bullet per second isn't bad at all. Moving on to the skill setup here, this is the version I've personally settled on, which is probably better suited for most online players. It differs from other builds you might notice during the gameplay section as it doesn't spec into jokers. This is rare for my DSOD builds, but not without reason, as this particular Copycat setup doesn't really benefit from a larger health pool. If anything, it just means you have to land more headshots to heal up above 50% health and reactivate the grace period immunity. Instead, we go into the medic tree via painkillers to pick up medic bags and basic inspire. With all the additional survivability this build has, you can comfortably revive players by hand most of the time, so basic is all that you need. Moving on, I grab a single point in Stable Shot before heading over to Enforcer for Underdog, Resilience Haste, Shock and Awe Haste, and Bullseye. Bullseye is a key skill as it will grant you another opportunity to armor gate yourself every 2 seconds, and Shock and Awe Haste is an optional skill that I preferred here over something like the 5.7 AP pistol to help me deal with shields. Finally, it's Scavenger Basic in Ammo Specialist. Technician starts by picking up Hardware Expert, before acing out Steady Grip, Surefire, grabbing a single point in Lock and Load, and again acing Body Expertise. This is very much a comfort skill for me when running high fire rate builds, but also helps to increase the effective damage range of my Akimbo Primary, as hitting those headshots becomes less crucial. Ghost is where this build really starts to deviate though, acing out Duck and Cover, basicking Parkour and Inner Pockets, acing the massively underrated Dire Need, hell even I underappreciated the power of this skill in a recent video, and getting a single point in Sneaky Bastard. As we're running sub 5 detection risk, that equates to 10% additional dodge. Over in Silent Killer, it's Second Wind into Optical Illusions and the Professional Aced, and then Low Blow and Unseen Strike Basic for up to 65% crit chance. Fugitive just sees us securing Equilibrium and Akimbo Aced alongside 9 lives for when playing 1 down. And that's it for the build. As I mentioned, you can expect to see 3 variants of this overarching template in today's video. The first didn't bother with Shock and Awe or Inspire, instead grabbing Joker skills like this, which can be good as a distraction, but certainly made shields hard to deal with. And finally I tried out a variant with the 5.7 AP pistol, still using the same build with Joker skills, which did a fine job and solved that shield problem, but did run into more ammo issues than when running 2 highly damaging weapons. As such, I recommend most of you try out the first build initially before adapting it for your own playstyles. That build makes use of the Akimbo Tatanka SMGs in the primary slot. These things have phenomenal damage output and retain really solid handling stats whilst running at a cool 28 concealment. They'll be doing a lot of the heavy lifting in this build, and can be ran with less concealment in mind if you choose to go with the 5.7 as your secondary. For my usual secondary, we go with 2022's most buffed weapon, the Uzi SMG. Also landing in that concealment sweet spot, this gun handles like a dream and has a very respectable damage output, and most importantly for this build, has excellent ammo pickup to support the more ammo hungry Tatankas, keeping your economy afloat. It also does particularly well with Copycat, as despite not having the best reload speed, we can auto reload it thanks to the tactical reload perk. Whilst your primary and secondary will be doing most of the work for you, this build also brings along 6 concussion grenades and the buzzer in the melee slot. It is of course a suit setup for that rapid armor regeneration, and I've chosen to run it with Distractor in my crew AI loadout to push that dodge chance even higher. In total, you'll be getting 20% from your perk deck, up to 20% more from skills when sprinting, and an additional 10% from Distractor and the suit's base stats. That's up to 50% dodge chance on a setup that already has dozens of ways to survive combat. That said, let's take a closer look at why this Anarchist Copycat build seems so broken at the moment. First things first, I'd be remiss not to mention the matchup versus snipers. They deal 240 damage on death sentence, and you have 250 total health and armor. This puts you in a slightly perilous spot, but if you do get hit at full health, you will automatically become damage immune straight after, making them less lethal than you might initially expect. Don't get me wrong, they are this build's only real Achilles heel, but certainly no more so than regular Anarchist in my experience. Moving on to the outright positives, its matchup against just about every other enemy type is brilliant. DPS wise, you should have 0 difficulties with these 3 SMGs at your disposal. Dozers will melt and have a really tough time breaking through the 2 walls of invulnerability that are unique to this setup. In fact, I haven't even begun to talk about the potential 4 seconds of immunity that comes with this build. We know that Blitzkrieg Bot brings 2 seconds when your armor breaks, but equally when the next shot lands to your health pool, even if it's a heavy SWAT hitting for 225, you will become damage immune once again for a further 2 seconds thanks to Copycat's own grace period perk. 4 seconds is a long time in Payday 2, and this isn't even taking into account the armor gating instances that will occur in between. Sometimes it'll feel like you're living life on the edge, but trust me, you're harder to take down than even some of the most armored builds in the game. It is worth trying to internalize those cooldowns though, at 30 seconds for the armor and 15 for the health, as there may be moments when you move too early and miss out on a key invulnerability period. Also, keep tabs on your health. As soon as it drops below 50%, do everything in your power to heal back up to above that threshold before you take any serious risks. This can easily be done thanks to the head games perk in Copycat, requiring roughly 11 to 12 headshots to reactivate the skill from very low health. You can of course go with first aid kits to achieve this faster instead of doctor's bags, but I find the additional team utility of the latter to be more useful in the long run. Funnily enough, this build also makes use of the Is This Your Bullet perk, which is admittedly a little gimmicky, but amusing all the same when you spot it working as intended. There are a few other facets of this build worthy of discussion, for example Dire Need, a skill I said was one of the most underwhelming in the game last year. How wrong I was, as when mixed into a build that so frequently loses its armor pool completely, this becomes an excellent disruption tool, effectively stunning enemies and becoming another form of pseudo armor gating when it's not possible to directly take down the cops shooting at you. It's also key as it allows us to grab Sneaky Bastard, a fine skill that is massively nerfed by its placement within the ghost tree. It takes 16 skill points just to access it, and for most builds an additional 12 just to access its full value. But here, thanks to the innate concealment of the SMG class, we can just basic it out whilst picking up genuinely important build skills instead of the usual point fodder. The same is true, just to a lesser extent, of Low Blow, allowing for more silencer skills in place of acing it out. In terms of playstyle, you can absolutely afford to play aggressively with this build, but do want to temper that aggression around your invulnerability periods and the current threats on the map. As it's very easy to lose your invulnerability, even to regular enemies on higher difficulties, you should play patiently and methodically around cover until it becomes time to clear some space for your team or take out larger threats such as bulldozers. This is a flow that you can easily drop into and hits that sweet hypnotic spot of gameplay design, similar to running Kingpin and playing around the injector. Honestly, there's something kind of relaxing about playing this build, in spite of the absolute carnage you're witnessing on screen. Finally, despite the fact that you have up to 50% dodge chance on this build, never, and I mean never, rely on that dodge to keep you alive. Instead, consider it a nice passive boon offering effective tankiness that can be withdrawn at a moment's notice. I've come to see that when I go down with this build, it's almost always my fault, as I come to expect nothing can touch me, even though I've actually just been saved by highly beneficial RNG for the past 5 minutes. Better players than I will never rely on that luck continuing indefinitely. Overall, what can I say really? This is a far cry from the best build of 2020, let me tell you that. It's faster paced, higher octane, and less reliant on dying all the time. In my honest opinion, it's probably abusing game mechanics a little more than the team initially had in mind when creating Copycat, but that was always going to happen eventually with the beast of a deck we got. So far, this has absolutely been my favourite way to play Copycat in Payday 2, somehow one of the safest and most powerful builds simultaneously. But I'd still love to hear from you guys how you're getting the most out of this deck. Are you buffing otherwise less popular skills as with the biker variants, or have you found the Armoured Stoic build to be the comfiest way to play the game? Let me know in the comments below, share your builds, and of course your feedback on this setup is always appreciated and goes a long way in helping me to improve my own build making skills. Thank you so much for watching, I'll see you all very soon. A huge thank you to my dedicated Patreon backers. If you want to join this crew in going infamous, check out the link below and pledge as little as $2 to see your name in the credits, or get 24-hour early access to future videos and vote on upcoming content. Take care, I'll see you all soon.